Walter Bowers, a former CMPD officer, now a practicing attorney in town. Walter, the scope and the magnitude of this tragic shooting, as a former officer, your reaction when you heard that 8 officers were shot?
I do not believe that there are many situations in our country where we've ever seen something like this all at one time. With the exception of some terrorist events. When you look at these horrible incidents, it's always horrible when you have one officer that is impacted. But to have a situation where you have 8 officers that are wounded and 4 that are killed in the line of duty, it is extremely rare. And unfortunately, it's something that's happening way too often. The first thought that comes to mind is the fact that most of these officers that were involved with this yesterday, they have to get up this morning and do this all over again.
Well, that was my question, was how does this impact morale, fear, not only for the officers that have to go back to work today, but the families that are going, they just walk out of the door. It could potentially happen every single day.
It could absolutely potentially happen every single day. And as I was thinking about what could I compare this to as it relates to something that I've seen personally, the only thing that I could compare it to was when I was deployed to Iraq. I remember a day we lost 5 soldiers at once, and you had a moment to grieve, and then suddenly you just had to jump back into the fight. And I just want to certainly personally thank those officers and their families because this is an extreme situation, and those officers are going to need support from the families or from the community for quite some time.
And we thank them as well. Why is it that it takes a tragedy to remind us of that sacrifice that they make each and every day, each and every shift?
Right. That's a great question. The truth of the matter is we've had so many things that have happened that have kind of taken the focus off of what law enforcement does on a daily basis. You know, sometimes we'll have incidents that are maybe not so good, and we forget about the good that happens 99% of the time. And you're right, it should not take 8 officers being wounded for us to realize the sacrifice these men and women of all gender and races make on a daily basis.
We had a comment from President Biden with his heartfelt condolences to the families of those lost, the other 4 families that are still affected. I mean, you still have 4 officers that are injured in the hospital, but he even says we need to do more to help protect law enforcement officers. What do you think needs to be done to try to help protect? I mean, I know you never know what the situation is when a SWAT team or marshals go to a house for an investigation or to give a warrant, but what do you think needs to be done to lessen the violence towards law enforcement?
That's a great question. You know, one of the things that was being discussed when there was a lot of conversation as it relates to police reform, one of the things that was being discussed was actually removing funds from law enforcement. I hope the world can see why now that would be a horrible idea. If you think about the type of ammunition, the type of weapon this suspect was using, that was one individual. I don't think we realize how many individuals are armed like that in our society. So we have to have a law enforcement department that is certainly fully funded and have all the equipment they need to protect us. And secondly, I'm certainly a proponent of mental health. These officers are going to need a lot of mental health support over the coming days and weeks. I know they're tough women and men, but if we could certainly support them and provide those services, and I know the department will, we want to make sure we encourage them to do that so that they can continue to do what they've been doing well.
From the legal perspective, we know this investigation's still very early. 2 shooters, possibly. What's happening right now from the investigation standpoint that's going on behind the scenes? Because every little I needs to be dotted and T needs to be crossed.
There are multiple investigations going on, in my humble opinion. And what I mean by that is obviously you have the investigation that's going on scene, You'll have the investigation that's going on as it relates to the 2 individuals that were in the home. You'll have a search of their cell phone records and things of that nature, and the list will go on and on. Anyone that was possibly connected to this particular individual that was responsible for the loss of life is certainly someone that law enforcement is going to be looking after. The scope of the investigation is broad. It's going to involve multiple agencies. CMPD probably is going to be the lead on it because it happened here, but it's certainly something that's just going to take quite some time to be resolved.
And I can only imagine the brotherhood and sisterhood that is within the law enforcement community will probably come around and wrap their arms around these 4 families that have all now lost someone as of yesterday.
That's correct. Charlotte Mecklenburg Police Department has had a couple of incidents where they've lost at least 2 officers during one incident, and we saw the outpouring from the country for 2 officers. The outpouring for 8 officers, 4 who lost their life, is going to be overwhelming, and I hope and pray it brings some relief to the family, and hope the officers understand that, hey, you know, it's a tough job. It's not always something that's celebrated, but we still have your back.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a thankless job, and we should all thank them for what they do and their families. Walter Bowers, an attorney and former CMPD officer, we appreciate your insight. We know this is not an easy thing to talk about, as you have friends who were out at that scene working yesterday. So we appreciate it. You're going to be here with us this morning.